We consistently teach our kids that each person in this family is a valued member of our family, and all of us are going to express that in the way that we live out our life as a family whole. This is something you absolutely have to be intentional about, because even though it might seem like that should just be something everybody understands, it's not. Hey, my name is Sarah Short, and I'm a busy mom of 5 kids, and after almost 2 decades of parenting, I'm here to share with you everything I've learned from my triumphs and successes and from my biggest mistakes. Think of me as the mom who's been where you are, remembers how hard, hilarious, and exhausting your days are, and wants to help you navigate your days as a mom with courage and intention, all while fostering amazing relationships with your kids and a home life you love. My Nana once told me, there's no way but through. Turns out she was right, in life and in motherhood. So throw in some headphones and come laugh and cry with me as we talk about all things mom. This is the No Way But Through podcast. Welcome back to the No Way But Through podcast. I'm your host, Sarah Short, and I'm so happy to be back with you guys again today. We just finished up some good spring break time together as a family, so there was no podcast drop last week. I announced that over on Instagram, so if you're not following along over there, that's where you can get some real-time announcements and information about the podcast. But I built in a week off at the beginning of this season. I built in a week off so that I could spend some really good intentional time with my kids and with my family while some of my kids were off school. We went up to Baltimore and we visited with family. We are big Baltimore Orioles fans, so we got to go to opening weekend, which is never something we've been able to do as a family. So all of us went for opening weekend, and it's great because Jason and I actually attended a ton of Orioles games while we were dating back in the late 90s. And so it was just really, really fun having time together to do that with our kids after all those years of dating and going to Orioles games. And then when we were first married, and just passing along our love of the Orioles to our kids. It's just really been fun for us to see them become big Orioles fans too. We got some really good time with Jason's family as well, with some of his extended family, with his parents and his aunt and some of his cousins. Just really sweet family time. We had Easter up there, and we came back and just ready to get back into school and work, and just really grateful to be back here again with you guys today. Over the next couple of weeks here on the podcast, we're going to talk about helping your kids through different transitions in life and through different types of change. When a new baby comes home, when you go from 1 to 2 kids or 2 to 3 kids, transitions like if your oldest goes off to kindergarten, and that means there's a shift for your other kids that are home, and the kid right behind them has some change in their life. And we're also going to talk about things like when there's big change in your family because of maybe unwelcome circumstances that have come into your family life. And so the next couple of weeks, we're really going to be honing in and focusing on helping our kids through transitions and change. Your kids are going to experience so much change and different transitions into new stages in their lives. And one of the things that we can do as moms is be really intentional about what that looks like for our kids. There are a lot of things that we can do to help ease those transitions for our kids and for us and for our husbands. So this is going to be a 2-part podcast, meaning I'm going to split this topic into 2 different episodes, one this week and one next week, because it's a lot of ground to cover. And I didn't want to record one super long episode on this, but thought it would be most helpful to actually break it up into 2 episodes. Today is the first episode, and I'm going to talk to you about really foundational things that you can be thinking through before we get into next week. Things you can be thinking through while your kids are really little, and that if you apply these general and foundational concepts, if you buy into these things early as moms with really young kids, then they're really going to help you with specific transitions that you face later on with your kids down the road. And then in part 2, I'm going to talk to you specifically about some tips and tricks and ways to handle specific transitions and different ways that have been really helpful for us as parents over here. So the first part's going to be sort of foundational thoughts around transitioning between stages and when change comes into your life as a family, and really when anything in your life and family is changing. And then part 2 will be specifically how to handle some different situations and how we've handled things, and just with some tips and tricks that I've learned over the last 20 years that I've been a mom. Really want to give you some very practical tips on how to help change be smoother for your kids and for your family, and how to help your kids along as anything shifts or changes in their lives. So as we hop in today's episode, there are 2 main ideas that I want to talk to you about today. Next week, we'll talk more specifically, but today, these are 2 foundational things I want to share with you that I hope will impact how you parent change in your kids' lives. I'm going to share these both with you today, then next week we'll dive into the scenarios where you can apply some of this, okay? So let's get started. Number 1. If you want a close-knit family, you have to be intentional about it. If you want a close-knit family, you have to be intentional about it. All right, Sarah, so what does this have to do with change and transitioning between numbers of kids and new babies and kids going to kindergarten? Or we have to move, we're moving states, we're moving houses, we're moving from one side of town to the other, we're switching schools or switching churches. What does this close-knit family thing have to do with that? Let me say this first. If you don't care about having a close-knit family, meaning you don't really care if your kids are close, it isn't one of your parenting goals to have your kids get along and be for each other, bonded with each other, and to grow up into adults who want to hang out together and love each other well, and you don't aspire to a future with adult kids where y'all are spending time together with them, you have closeness with each other and as a family, then you can skip this episode altogether. Because if that doesn't matter to you, then you will survive the discord and the chaos and the craziness of raising kids in life. You'll make it through their toddler years and their little years because they're going to grow up. And if nothing else, the time's just going to pass. So if that's something that doesn't matter to you, them being close with each other and being close with you, then what I'm going to talk about isn't going to matter so much to you. But in all the years that I've been a mom and all the moms that I've talked to over the years, I haven't had anybody ever say to me in those conversations that they didn't care if their kids were close or if their family was close, that they didn't care if their kids were friends when they grew up, and they didn't care if they were close with their kids when their kids were adults. I have had different friends who have prioritized that more greatly than others, for sure. But I don't think I have really ever talked to anyone over the years, any one of my friends or peers that have said, I don't really care if my kids are close, and I don't really care if I have a close relationship with my kids when they're older. In fact, I've spent many, many hours in conversations with friends asking me how it is that my kids are so close, asking me how it is that I have such close relationships with my teenagers and now with my 2 adult kids. I will tell you that this didn't happen on accident. It didn't happen because I just happen to have kids that really like each other and because I always like my kids. My family is no different than yours. My kids squabble. They are very different from one another, and there are 1 million reasons for my kids not to be close with each other and not to like each other, and for them not to like me, and for Jason not to like them and them not to like their dad either. Life is hard, And it's thrown us and our family many circumstances that could cause discord and disagreement and break our relationships with one another. Some of those things are just the facts of being in a big family and having a lot of kids and our kids having a lot of siblings. There are a million different scenarios that we've been in that could have caused break in our relationships. One of my kids getting something that one of my other kids wanted. A new baby being born and the older sibling being upset that the baby was getting so much attention. Going through a particularly hard season with one of our kids and them needing a ton of attention and the other kids feeling envious of that. There are so many reasons for your family not to be close because life is hard and relationships are hard and it's hard to live with other people, right? It's hard to live day in and day out with other people who aren't like you and who get on your nerves and that irritate you. And y'all, there is sin in my family. There is sin in our hearts, and we have to live with that and exist with that, but it's never been okay with me. And it's never been okay with Jason for us to just exist as a family and for us to go through life just being okay with each other. We have always wanted and prioritized a closeness, and we've been willing to fight for that, and what that's looked like is a whole lot of intention. It's always been really important to both me and Jason that our kids feel secure in their place, in our home, and in our lives and hearts. I talked about this in episode 4 in 2 habits that helped create a close-knit family. And one of those habits is that we celebrate the individuality of each of our kids and we all celebrate each other together. Their siblings celebrate each other as well. One of the things I mentioned in that episode is that we all go to each other's games and we all celebrate when someone is doing something in our family and that we all go, we attend each other's different things. We prioritize closeness, both with emotions and with proximity. This is one of those foundational things that I want to be sure you understand before we move into specifics next week on how you can help your kids deal with change and transitions in their lives and in your family. We consistently teach our kids that each person in this family is a valued member of our family, and all of us are going to express that in the way that we live out our life as a family whole. This is something you absolutely have to be intentional about. Because even though it might seem like that should just be something everybody understands, it's not. Your kids need to be taught this, and this needs to be modeled for them if they are going to understand, like truly understand, that everybody is equally valued and that everybody is loved and that we as mom and dad, we care about everyone as equal members of our family, and each person is an essential part of who we are together. So this leads me to number 2. The second foundational thing that I want you to really understand as we head into specifics next week is this. While your kids may not remember it, they are being formed by it. One of the things that is sometimes really hard for me to express to the young moms in my real life and to y'all here on this podcast, because I don't ever want you to feel guilty or for me to be a source of guilt for you, but I really want to empower you and encourage you. This is something that can be really hard for me to express, but it's so important, and I want you to hear me out on this. If you want change to go well, as you welcome new babies into your family, and I'm not even talking just about transitions when a new baby is born. That is certainly one of the biggest areas that y'all ask me to help you with. Like, how do I help my kids transition, my husband transition, all of us transition when a new baby arrives on the scene? But Also to include like as they're growing up and one goes off to school or you're in another transition mode of some sort. One's going off to preschool and the little ones are left behind. There are going to be a lot of different transitions that you'll go through where your day-to-day lives shift and change and start to look different. One thing that's so important that I want you to understand is that while your little ones might not remember what happens when they're 18 months old or 12 months old, 18 months old, 2 years old, 2.5. They are being formed during those years by what happens to them and by what they experience. While your kids may not remember it, they are still being formed by it. One of the ways that this can play out and how I've seen it play out in some of my friends' lives over the years, especially when I had littler ones, is that parents can be tempted to leave the baby behind. They want to go on vacation and they leave their 2-year-old behind with grandparents or with friends, or they don't take them on the trip. They go to the beach and they leave the baby with someone else, or they go to their kids' baseball games and soccer games around town and they leave the littlest ones behind with a babysitter or with grandma or with dad. If I could encourage you with anything on this podcast today, it's that your little ones are being formed by the decisions that you make in the places that you take them and what they're watching and seeing and how they're experiencing life, even though they won't ever remember any of it. It is so good for them at 1 year old to be pulled up in a high chair to the table and eating with everybody else, even if they throw everything on the floor and even if it's more disruptive and chaotic. It is so good for them at 2 to go watch their siblings play baseball or soccer because it's teaching them to look out and watch what their siblings are doing, and they're watching you cheer for them and seeing what that looks like, and they are being formed by it. When you go on vacation, and y'all are all out on the beach, and your little one, your tiny toddler, is eating the sand, and you're exhausted and you're tired because it would have been so much easier to leave the baby at home. They are learning what it looks like to look out and see their older siblings, and they see what their future is going to look like, and they are learning that they are a valuable and important part of your family. The other critical piece of this is that not only are your babies, your tiny ones being formed, but your older kids are being formed by learning to value the baby, by learning that it isn't all about them, by learning that we make sacrifices for other people, and sometimes that's the baby in the family. That maybe we all have to come back and we have to go to bed a little bit earlier because we're sharing a room and we have to turn the light off. Or we have to come back and the baby has to take a nap, so we have to leave the beach early. But they learn that laying down their lives for somebody else is good and awesome and hard and requires sacrifice, and all of the things being in relationship with people is going to ask of them for the rest of their lives. Y'all, I can't tell you how many of my peers and the young moms in my life that know me and know my children come to me and ask me, what is the secret? What is the secret? How are your kids so close with each other? Why do I look at them and see them cheering for each other in ways that I don't see in other families very often? Y'all, this is it. It is absolutely intentional, and it requires much of you as a parent. It is easy to go separate directions. It is easier to leave the baby at home with dad. It is easier for mom to go this way with the big kids and dad to stay home with the little ones, or vice versa. It is easier to plan a vacation when you don't have a 2-year-old. It is easier, but it is not better. If you want your kids to know how to prioritize each other when big changes come into your family, when life throws curveballs at you, and it will, if you want them to be close later on in life when they are teens and adults, then you have to teach them to prioritize each other from the time they're born. You have to model it. You can't create it later. You can make them go to their siblings' high school football games, but if they haven't been trained all the way through to love it and enjoy it and support their sibling, there's nothing you can do to conjure it up later. If you want them to value it, you have to train them to value it. You train them to see other people. You train them to cheer for other people. And you train them to cheer for the people in their lives that are right in front of them day after day, their siblings. It isn't easy, y'all. I am not sitting here telling you this is easy. But most things in life of value rarely are. People will tell you it all goes by so quickly. And I know what people mean when they say that. I know what people mean when they say that to y'all as young moms. But y'all, time is certain and steady. No minutes, hours, days, months, or years go by any more quickly than any of the others. But I think the sentiment behind people saying that to you as young moms, especially people who are older than you, telling you to really savor this and enjoy this time when, y'all, I don't ever say that to you because I know you're drowning and I know it's hard. But the sentiment behind that is that once you arrive where I am, when your kids are getting older and you look back and their childhood is finished, which is the case with my two oldest kids now, the time is gone. There is no more doing because it's all been done. Their childhood is finished. What you have right in front of you now is all of these years that you get to decide now as young moms how you want things to look later. Are there perfect formulas? No, there aren't any perfect formulas, and there are no guarantees that things are going to turn out the way you hope they'll turn out. But you get to affect it now. You get to be intentional now. You get to choose what you value and what you want things to look like in the future, and you get to parent towards that. And you get to walk them through change and transitions with intention instead of being reactionary and hoping it turns out okay. Maybe 6 or 7 years ago, I was with one of my really close girlfriends, and I remarked to her in a quite a vulnerable moment and in a pretty intimate conversation with her, just me and her, that sometimes I think our friends think my family is weird. That we do things differently than some of the other families in our community. And that while I'm so grateful for the way we've parented because of the investment some older parents made in us that I've shared with y'all, that sometimes I just feel like people might see us and think that we're just weird. She looked me right in the eye and said, "Sarah, that's never what people say. Do you want to know what people say? They remark how intentional you guys are with all of the decisions that you make and all of the ways that you parent your kids. It's how intentional you are." I was so grateful that she shared that with me. And I told her so because y'all, you never know what people are saying when you're not there, right? Like we all know that, right? And frankly, we don't choose how we parent based on perceptions of how others might feel about our parenting. There are definitely things about our parenting that are worthy of criticism, and we've always aimed to be humble about that. But I remember going into my car and crying all the way home because intention comes with a cost. Intention isn't free. Intention means that when you go on vacation and you always take all of you and you always take the baby and you're always thinking about training your kids and you want your decisions to matter and you want your parenting to serve your kids well as they launch into adulthood down the road, it's costly. If the road you are on as parents with your kids is paved with intention, it will be costly. It requires sacrifice. Intention isn't easy. The mental load we carry when we are weighing things and trying to determine what is best long-term for our kids, for our future adults, that mental load is heavy. But y'all, it is so worth it. As I mentioned before in episode 6, we all deal with mom guilt, right? Questions of, am I doing or not doing enough or being enough? There are so many complexities to being a parent and to being a mom. And how am I supposed to be getting it all right? I can't be intentional with everything. No, you can't. And that's why we fall to our knees in prayer and we lift our kids up to God every day and in every season that they're walking through and that we're walking through with them. And we ask God to fill the places where we come to the end of ourselves and we don't quite have it figured out. And we don't feel like we're enough. And we honestly aren't enough. So he gives us grace for the day, and we know and we trust that he loves our kids more than we do. So as we head into talking more specifically about transitions and change with new babies and new life stuff and sending kids off to school and moving or any of the challenges we face when our kids have to go through transitions and we as parents, we walk with them through transition. I want you to take these 2 things from this podcast today and bring them with you when you listen again next week. 1, if you want a close-knit family, if that is one of your long-term goals or short-term and mid-term goals, like with your family, if you want to be a close-knit family, you have to be intentional about it. And I'm going to share more about that next week and specifically how that applies to changing seasons in your family. Number 2, while your kids may not remember it, they are still being formed by it. This has far-reaching implications, yes, but it has so much opportunity for you to help form your kids into people who see others and value others and to greatly impact how they process change. So that's it for this week. I'll be back here next Tuesday and we will dive into some specifics, some different scenarios, and very practical tips and tricks that I can share with you on how to help your kids and your husband and your family as a whole walk through change together and do it really, really well. See y'all next time. You've just listened to another episode of the No Way But Through podcast. If you want to connect with other like-minded moms and join our growing online community, head on over to Instagram and follow along with us at No Way But Through. You can always reach me over there throughout the week. And if you'd like to financially support this podcast, there's a link at the bottom of every episode where you can do just that.